Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just going to give a couple of extra seconds just to make sure everybody's able to officially get in the room. Thank you for joining us. All right. I think we're good. So, welcome. Thank you for joining us for our first of our Faculty Career Path series, Faculty Job Market 101. I have the pleasure of welcoming and introducing our facilitator today, Dr. Molly Lotz. Molly, who many of you know and hold dear to our hearts, is the Director of Research Training Initiatives and the Interim Director for Postdoctoral Affairs. In her role, she works to expand Stony Brook support for the research training needs and professional development of graduate students and postdoctoral scholars. And we're excited to have Molly back with us today. So, Molly, would you like to take it away?
Thanks so much, Lisa. Thanks for that really kind introduction. So welcome, everybody. I'm happy to see lots of familiar faces and some new ones, and to talk with you all today about the faculty job market. So this is, we call this Faculty Job Market 101 because we really mean it to be just kind of a foundational kind of brass tacks session on what to expect from going out on the faculty job market. So this session might be appropriate for you if you are kind of just thinking that in the next year or so you might go out on the market, or maybe you're actually thinking like, okay, this fall I'm going to start sending out materials, and so you're thinking about getting those ready, and you want to know what to expect over the coming months. So we're going to start. A lot of the session is going to be about actual kind of implementation strategies, but I first want to kind of set the stage and think about how we prepare ourselves before we begin this process. So I know there's lots of conversation, right, about the faculty job market, and I'm sure you all have heard a lot of negative things about it, and that it's so hard to find a job. I like to go back to the data and kind of know what we're actually dealing with, and so I think that's kind of comforting and reassuring to know what you should actually expect from the probability that you'll at least be able to get a first round interview if you go out on the market. So I pulled some of this data. This is from the Survey of Earned Doctorates, which is kind of the largest data set of graduates with PhDs. And so this data is from 2024. That's the most recent complete data set that we have. Obviously, it'll be really interesting to see what the 2025 data looks like, because lots happened last year in the landscape of higher education that affects the faculty job market. So that will be interesting to see. Unfortunately, we don't have that data yet, but we'll go based on our last reliable data set here. So the reason I have this chart up is that I want to point out, so in 2024, there were about 58,000 people in the US who graduated with a PhD. If you go, I have the link here on the slides, which we'll share afterward. And so if you go and look back at the historical data, you'll see that this number is climbing and climbing and climbing. And so that contributes to the sense of a scarce job market, because more people are graduating with PhDs. And then this number of kind of definite commitments or kind of where people are landing, that grows less quickly, okay? But that said, we end up with about 63% of people who graduate with a PhD having some kind of academic, commitment to employment. So more than half are finding jobs. Still may not, more than half is not 100%. So I understand why that might feel bleak at times or discouraging. I don't want to discourage anybody in the session. This is meant to be about being pragmatic, being realistic about what the odds are, and whether a faculty search is the right fit for you. And if it is, there is a chance, there is more than a zero chance that you will be able to find the kind of academic employment that really works for you. So again, of those 58,000 who graduated with a PhD, 37-ish thousand end up with definite commitments, which include postdoc positions, right? So we can pull those out. Other academic employment is where faculty positions fall. So somebody who went right from a PhD into a faculty position would fall in that in that space. So that's about 8,000, right? A smaller number. Then we have a fair amount that go to industry, other employment in other sectors, um, and then an amount who go abroad. So that again, I want us to see this as like a glass half full thing, right? $8,000, 8,000 is a smaller number than 58,000, but that's still 8,000 people who found, the employment that they were seeking. And there's nothing to say that you couldn't be one of those people. It's really about timing and luck, and most importantly, finding the right fit. Like most institutions who are looking to hire faculty are looking for somebody who's the right fit for the position that they're offering. And so with the right strategy, that you could certainly be considered, among that pool. With that said, again, being realistic about this data, while you are doing a faculty search, we want to encourage you not to neglect a plan B. It's just going to make you feel more empowered and more prepared if you feel like you have another avenue that you can pursue. It's going to help you stay motivated as you go out on the market. Most PhD holders who are on the faculty job market go out for about 3 cycles. And so that's like 3 years. That's a long time, right? And so you're going to need to have strategies and kind of other things to keep you going during that time. And a plan B can be one of those things. It can be something that you nurture alongside your faculty career aspirations, and that maybe brings you income in the interim. As I said, so success in the faculty job market is a combination of qualifications and fit and luck. And having some options will help you just feel empowered about your search. You want to be excited about your faculty career search without kind of putting all of your eggs into one basket kind of thing. And I think part of that is really reflecting honestly with yourself about how long you're willing to try for a position. So as I said, 3 cycles is about the average. Decide whether that's reasonable for you. Maybe you have family responsibilities, you have other responsibilities that are going to make a longer search difficult for you or, unattainable for you. Maybe you have, visa sponsorship that you need to consider. So really kind of do some reflection at the front end to be honest with yourself about what you are willing, to try. So before we kind of get started in earnest, I wanted to throw this plug in here, as a way to frame that what I'm going to talk about is the academic job market in the United States. If you're interested in a global career search, I think that's amazing. And I'm so excited that we will be bringing Sonali Majumdar to Stony Brook in September, as part of a new postdoc link research symposium. So she will be our keynote speaker, and she's the author of Thriving as an International Scientist, which really is a great overview of what a global career search looks like and how international scholars, have this strength of career mobility and global mobility in their careers. So if that's something you're thinking about, check out her book and also try to attend her keynote in September. I think it's going to be a really great conversation. So anyway, that's all to say that I'm going to be focusing on the US. But if you want to talk in more depth about, kind of a wider career search and want to be connected to more resources around that, I would be happy to talk to you afterwards and figure out how to connect you there. Okay, so let's get started. Let's talk about the process and what it looks like. So the faculty job search process, it's like I said, it's a cyclical process. And it's really about, even though the actual work of applying will probably happen over a couple of months every year when job postings come out, it's really a year-round process of preparing yourself, gathering your materials, get everything together, and ensuring that like you really have a strong foundation to move from. So the cycle starts with a self-assessment. We talked a little bit about that, of like making sure this is the right fit for you, making sure this is something you want to do. You reflect on what your goals are, what your strengths are, what you're really interested in doing with a faculty career. So we're going to start with some self-assessment. Then from that self-assessment, once you have clarity on your goals and your objectives, start using that to build some support, identify the resources that are going to help you really build a strong application package. Then from there, you can start to craft your materials and put that package together. Um, then do some research, plan, and organize to build a process for how you're going to apply to all of these jobs, how you're going to send out those materials and manage all of those moving parts. And then finally, most importantly, thinking about how to make this sustainable for yourself, how to build self-care into this process, because it is a lot. It requires a lot of administrative and highly detailed work on top of, the intensive, highly detailed work you're already doing as a graduate student or a postdoc. So you really need to do some planning to ensure that this is going to be a sustainable process for you, because again, this is a marathon. It's not a sprint. If you're determined to do this, you're going to be in it for the long haul, and you want to make sure that you're caring for yourself along the way. And then start again. You should be kind of continuing to assess and reflect, and see if your goals have changed and if we need to reevaluate what your strategy is. But these are kind of the main topics that I'm going to cover today in this cycle, and we're going to walk through them one by one. So starting with some self-assessment. Again, I'll send out the slides here, and I've included a link on this slide for an academic career readiness self-assessment through the University of California, San Francisco. They have this rubric tool that is a really great resource in thinking about whether you're ready to go on the job market. And so it looks at, your publications, your teaching experience, your mentoring experience, and kind of gives you a sense of what your fit is, right? And how are you comparing against other candidates who might be going out? Are you ready to go out in the cycle, or do you need to take another year to, build some more experience in a certain area, or, kind of build up your CV a little bit more so that you're in a stronger position to apply for next year? It also, it's looking at your career readiness, but I think also invites you to reflect on, are these things that you want to be doing in your career going forward. So as you're reflecting on, whether you're ready to move into a teaching position, whether you're ready for, the focus on research that you intend, whether you're ready to do a certain level of mentoring and other kinds of service and administrative work that's part of being a faculty member, really kind of look closely at how you feel when you're answering those questions, and whether these are components of your work that you want in your day-to-day life, because that's important information for you. Again, just not thinking about, are we moving towards a faculty position because it seems like the logical next step after we do a postdoc or after we graduate with a PhD, or is there really something about this career path that excites us and motivates us and that we want to, you know, uh, move forward into? And so I just included this PhD comics cartoon. Academia is like, it's a different thing than other kinds of jobs. Like it's a different kind of lifestyle than industry jobs, or the nonprofit sector, or other types, like public service work, other types of things. Like, and one example here is like the schedule is a little different, right? Like you might have more flexibility in your schedule, but that also means like you're probably working in, like, work is tends to expand to the size of its container, kind of thing. So reflecting again on what you want to be doing in your day to day, and also like what kind of how does this kind of work fit into the other aspects of the life that you want? Looking at it from a holistic perspective. And so a really great way to do this is to have an individual development plan. So you might be required by your funder to have an IDP in place that you submit to your PI, and that kind of includes your career goals. We like to, Lisa and I, we really like to take a holistic view of an IDP and think about, how you use your IDP to create your vision for your life, and think about, career vitality, not just career goals, right? A goal is like a concrete objective that seems like there's a linear path forward for that. And obviously we're all human beings who are complex, and there's a lot more that goes into building a career and a life than kind of setting out to achieve a goal and build a skill. Um, so what I really like about some of the do-it-yourself IDP tools, especially the Imagine PhD tool, is that it invites you to reflect on your values, your strengths, and your interests. And so I think that whether you need you're required to do an IDP or not, it's a really good thought exercise to start reflecting on those things and think about, as you're moving forward in this particular path, does it fit those values and those interests that you have? And then, of course, if you want some more support with the IDP process, we have a 90-minute workshop that we offer each fall and spring that's a little bit more in depth in that process. And then we also, through the Office of Graduate and Postdoctoral Professional Development, we have a more intensive peer-led career mentoring program called the Exploring Career Ladders Program. I see some of our ECLP leaders in the audience today, so you all, I won't spend time on that because you all probably know about this. But this is a really a great way to do a little bit more of this like peer-led faculty or career search, regardless of whether you want to move into a faculty or another kind of career. Okay, so again, this self-assessment is a really important part of setting yourself up. Not only do you or do you not want a faculty career, I'm guessing that because all of you are here, the answer to that is yes. But also thinking about what type of faculty career do you want, because it's not a monolith. There's a lot of variety between different kinds of institutions and different kinds of positions. And so that self-reflection is going to help you understand what kinds of positions you should be aiming yourself toward. Another way to think about that is what kind of accomplishments will satisfy you in 5 years, like in your career vision. What are the things that you're going to be proud of that you think you're going to be will feel really meaningful to you as you look back on them, which relates to what your values and priorities are. And that's something that you can reflect on through the IDP process. And also importantly, what constraints do you have, right? What that could be immigration status, it could be, family needs, it could be cost of living in a particular area that constrains your search. So all of these things are important to lay out on the table so that you know kind of what you're dealing with and how you want to move forward. As I mentioned, there's lots of variety in the different types of faculty positions, and a lot of that has to do with the different types of academic institutions. So I just wanted to give a quick map of like kind of what the differences are. So we at Stony Brook are here at the in an R1, right? So that's the type of academic system that we're in, a research intensive institution. But there are there are R2s that have like a less aggressive research agenda. There are also teaching or technical colleges. Some of the other colleges in the SUNY system are more teaching and focused. And so like that's an important thing to know because that's almost a completely different kind of life as a faculty member if you're at a research intensive versus a teaching intensive institution. Your interaction with students will be different. Your daily work is going to be very, very different. Also a liberal arts focused college is probably closer to a teaching college, but also just a different pace of things, a different set of priorities. And same for our community colleges. And then also like institutions vary by their size, by whether they're public or private. That's a big, big difference. Where they are in the US, whether they're, a land grant institution. And then within each institution, there's still variability, whether, your tenure track faculty member, whether you're primarily teaching focused. So that's sometimes in job ads, you'll see that as teaching track or teaching stream, or sometimes they won't even make that explicit, but because the institution is a primarily undergraduate teaching institution, like that's the nature of the position. And then, there's contract faculty and, adjunct faculty. Some of you I know are already teaching as adjunct faculty, so you'll be familiar with that. And then, there's different kinds of contracts at each institution. So some faculty are 12 months, some faculty are 10-month or 9-month. And so those are all the kinds of like ins and outs of this that you'll want to know and, want to kind of know, as you're interviewing positions, like what these terms mean as you encounter them, but also think about what in this menu of options feels like a good fit for you. So then you know how to prioritize them. Okay, so having done some self-assessment and like getting the lay of the land here, it's time to start building your support for this process. So, and by support, I mean thinking about your, not only your institutional, your intellectual support, the people who are going to read letters for you, help you build skills, help you connect to resources that you need, but also thinking about the emotional support that you're going to need from your peers, from your colleagues, from family members and mentors. and experiential support, like people who are going to be able to connect you to the experiences you need to build a strong application package. Um, so I mentioned the Exploring Career Ladders program already. That's a great professional development support team because it's peer mentored. It's a great kind of cohort to plug into. Also outside of Stony Brook, there's a Future PI Slack channel. So that's PhD holders from all over the country, even international, who are on the faculty job market and sharing information and supporting each other. It's great to connect to that, just to listen into that conversation. If you don't want to necessarily be an active participant, you don't have to, but you can kind of listen in. But if you do want to be an active participant, you can, connect to other people that way, maybe who are in your field and share experiences that way. And it like doesn't feel competitive at all. I know that there's a tendency for that, but it's really a supportive community. Um, and I'm sure you've heard this already, but like this is the time to be building your network. Lisa and I have also talked about this, but I really hate the idea of networking as this transactional thing. And I think that it's, number one, that doesn't feel good, right? It feels weird to just be like cold reaching out to people and initiating interactions with the goal of hoping somebody gives you a job. But it also is not very effective, right? You're going to have much better results from your network if you have really genuine, authentic connections. And so I think just focusing on growing your community and connecting to people who have similar interests to you and are like-minded, that's going to not only maybe yield connections for you down the road, but also just contribute to this support that you're building for yourself as you take on this process. Okay, so once we have our support in place, or we're starting to put that in place and grow our various networks and communities of mentors, we'll also think about crafting our materials. And this is the start of a series through the CIE where we're going to think about crafting all of these materials with you. So each session is focused around one of these pieces of the faculty application package. So if you want in-depth support with, for example, writing a teaching statement, we have a session in the series that focuses on that. So if you continue along with us over this spring and summer, we'll go through it all together. But generally, for every faculty application that you send out, you'll definitely need a CV and a cover letter. You'll for sure need letters of recommendation. Sometimes they ask for references, sometimes they ask for letters. They don't always ask for the letters up front, but they will, like if you move forward through their process and you're a top candidate, they will definitely ask for them at that point. So it's good to have them ready. Probably a research statement, especially for a research intensive institution. Also probably a teaching statement, but definitely for a teaching college where the bulk of your priority as a faculty member will be teaching. Diversity statement is kind of a question mark at this point because of because of where different institutions are in the US, like they have different guidelines about how they are able to talk about or not talk about diversity. So you may not see this in this current job market as often, but some institutions may still be able to ask for this and may still ask for this. So it's still something that you should feel prepared to talk about, at least, especially in interviews, but also kind of just understand the landscape so you know kind of how to talk about diversity and a commitment to diversity in different kinds of settings. Maybe they ask for a writing sample, sometimes they do, and maybe teaching evaluation, sometimes they ask for that as well. So as you're thinking about the process, these are the materials to start to think about gathering. And all of these together, your application package should tell a coherent narrative about yourself and your work. So what makes you stand out? And so that's something, even before you start to put materials together, you should start being able to answer that question, right? Who are you? Who are you as a scholar? And like, what do you have to offer to your field and to an institution as a faculty member? Really, like, honestly, like, this sounds weird, but like, practice this in the mirror every morning, like practice talking about this, because this is the more you practice telling the story to yourself, the more you are going to sound confident and coherent when you tell the story to other people, whether that's in writing in your materials or in your interviews later on in the process. Um, so make this a part of your daily practice, knowing that you're thinking about applying for faculty jobs to start being able to tell the story about yourself. Um, and because you'll be sending out multiple applications, having some templates that you craft maybe over the summer before you send out applications in the fall is going to help you have a firm base that you know you've worked a lot on. You know that the language in the letter is really solid, and you can tailor that to different kinds of institutions. You should only send requested materials to each job ad. So like if you have a writing sample that you think is really great and you're tempted to send it along, if they don't ask for it, don't send it. Um, you can look around at peers, like maybe, people are willing to share their materials on that future PI Slack. People share materials. You can also look at, faculty at institutions that you are interested in or faculty in your field to see how they set up their CV, how, kind of like how they format things, because maybe there's something you want to emulate there. Um, you will also want to be your own inner mentor. Um, don't be too hard on yourself as you're crafting these materials. They are hard, right? It is a lot of work to bring this together. Um, and it's hard, right? Because you're like putting your whole academic career on your CV and you're trying to tell the entire story of you and your progression as a scholar in one cover letter. And so it can be easy to start to see these as documents as like a reflection of your worth. And then when you send them out and you don't hear anything, then it feels like somebody is rejecting you personally. But remember, they are tools. They are tools to be able to tell your story and to be able to make a connection, a potential connection with an institution and a department and like a faculty hiring committee. But it's not, they're not entirely reflective of you. So start doing some reflection on what's your academic identity and how can you communicate in these documents your academic identity, but also how is that identity separate from like the core of who you are so that you don't feel like there's so much skin in the game when you send things out. And again, like the goal at this stage when you're crafting materials is you want to get an interview. So don't think about the whole thing all at once because that's going to overwhelm you. Just think about how you get to the next step. Also, at this stage, start creating an Interfolio account. Stony Brook has Interfolio access for faculty hiring and for like promotion and tenure. But most of you will not have access through the institution to Interfolio. And I highly, highly recommend you get your own personal Interfolio account that is not attached to the institution because these are your materials and you want to maintain access to them outside of your affiliation with Stony Brook. But Interfolio is really helpful to organize materials, to collect letters of recommendation, many faculty positions will also accept application packages through Interfolio. So it makes it just really easy for you to organize yourself and then also to just send things out. And it will collect, like you can send an Interfolio invitation to somebody that you want to write a letter for you, and Interfolio will hold that letter. It won't show it to you, so it keeps it confidential, but then you'll still have it and you'll be able to send it wherever you need. So it's a great tool. Highly recommend that you, if you're thinking about starting to send out applications or you're building your application package, that you have an Interfolio account. So just a note on using AI in your materials. I think AI is a really useful tool. It can be helpful to brainstorm ideas for cover letters. It can be helpful if you're trying to, like, you're writing something and you're not sure about the tone. It can be helpful for you to refine those materials. You can also put the job ad into like ChatGPT, for example. Like you can put in a job ad, you can put in your CV, and it can give you a first draft of a cover letter. It can also help you create mock interview questions in the same way. So it can be a really helpful tool. But like your goal, as I said, for your materials is to get yourself an interview. And what the faculty who are on these hiring committees are looking for is somebody who will be a good colleague, right? And so they really want to get a sense of you as a human being through your materials and what your story is. And so AI has like AI generated text has this tendency to kind of flatten things, and that is not at all the result that you want from your application materials. You want to stand out. You don't want to like blend in or seem like it, it's just kind of like formal language. Um, so if you're using AI as a tool, I think that's great. I think it can be really helpful, but you want to make sure that you are coming through in those materials. So make sure that you're editing whatever you're pulling from ChatGPT or other Gen AI tools, and that it really feels like your materials feel really authentic to you. And going back to that, when I was talking about like talk about yourself to yourself in the mirror in the morning and like where you've come from and like what you want to do, what you want to do moving forward as a faculty member, the more you do that and the more you feel like you have honed that story, the easier it will be to have that come through in your materials because that will be something that is genuine to you and not something that you feel like you should say because ChatGPT told you to say it. Yeah, and like again, thinking of yourself as a future colleague with these people who are reading your materials, like how would you introduce yourself to somebody that you want to be friends with? Obviously it's a more formal, it's an academic tone, but the spirit of it is the same. Okay. So that's about like those are the things that you need to pull together. Now let's talk about the process for how you're going to do all of that and how you're going to keep yourself organized and keep yourself on track with this timeline. So this is the traditional academic hiring timeline. I have an asterisk next to it because it's somewhat field dependent, and it also is changing. So more and more institutions are going off cycle with their hiring. Sometimes also like they tried to hire somebody in the fall and that search failed, so now they have a posting out in the spring, like off cycle to try to get somebody in for the fall. So it's not like all job postings come out in the early fall, but generally in most fields for most institutions, early fall is when academic job posts start to come out. Um, and generally, again, with an asterisk, late October, early November is usually when those deadlines are. Um, and then, if you start to hear back about first round interviews, that usually happens around December with on-campus interviews in February, March, in the early spring. Um, Offers tend to come out in March or April because the goal for most institutions is to have somebody in place for the fall. And so that's kind of the full year cycle. It might change, you might see some other different stuff, but if you're thinking about preparing for a search and preparing to have your materials ready, early fall should be your goal to have all of those materials, at least like templates of what you might send out, drafted and ready to go.
I have a question.
Yeah,
You say early fall, you mean like September, beginning of September?
late August, beginning of September. Yeah, even mid-August, mid to late August. And that's kind of why this series is scheduled the way we have it. Like we're starting to think about it now in the spring. A lot of the sessions will be late spring, early summer, because we want you to start crafting these materials over the summer so that you have them ready to go. In terms of where to look for jobs, there are lots of places. I put a couple up here that you will want to check out and kind of see what's out there. I highlighted in red the ones that are probably the most likely to, you know, uh, like where kind of the most activity is in terms of job posting. Um, LinkedIn increasingly is a place where faculty jobs are posted. You definitely want to have an active LinkedIn presence. You want to be active there. If you feel like you're not prepared to be engaging on LinkedIn or you don't know how to set up your LinkedIn profile, we have some resources that I'll share a little bit later to think about your academic online presence. But definitely look to LinkedIn as a place where you want to be active and also looking for jobs. Also, higher ed jobs is a big one. It's kind of a warehouse where it pulls from all, academic hiring positions, and it has some really great search tools. Um, uh, so for example, if you're doing a dual search with a partner, it has a tool for you to be able to look for positions together, which can be really helpful for couples who are on the market together or families. Um, and you can filter it by different geographic area, by like different things that you're looking for in a position and set it up as a saved search so that like if I if I want a weekly email of all of the jobs that have been posted in the Northeast, or like at a particular type of institution, and I can set that. And like maybe I'm also thinking about a secondary search and I'm willing to relocate to like the Pacific Northwest, I can have another search come through with like those positions and kind of organize them that way. So higher ed jobs is great, both in terms of reach and because of the kind of customization that you're able to do with it. And then there are a ton of others. You also want to think about your academic society. So within your discipline, my background is in English, and our big academic society is the Modern Language Association. They have a giant job board. So I would want to be looking there for positions that are specific to my field. And I'm sure the same is true for all of you. So whatever that is for your field, make sure you're connected to that big job board with your academic society. And in terms of getting organized, so once you are connected to these job postings and you've either set yourself a reminder on your calendar to check them, or you've set up searches that come to your inbox with positions, think about like, how are you going to set up this process of sending out applications? Because there will be a lot there will be a lot of fine detail that you need to keep track of, and you want to be organized for that. So a good strategy is that you want to submit enough applications, but not too many. I linked an article here where they actually they looked at the data behind this and they determined that like 15, at least 15, is the number of applications you need to send out in a cycle to have a good shot at moving forward. I think probably that article is a little bit old, and I think probably that number has increased significantly. So, but you also don't want to be sending out so many applications that you don't even know where you're applying, and like you've forgotten, you're falling into that error where you don't edit your template and you put the wrong institution name on your materials because like you're doing 50 of them at once. Like that's not going to be sustainable, and it's not going to be a good strategy for you either. So try to think about what that right number, that sweet spot is for you. And like a way to do that is like really only apply to the jobs that you think would be a good fit for you, and that if you were offered this position, you would take it. I know, especially in a climate where there's scarcity in the job market, people feel like they want to be open to opportunity and they don't want to rule anything out. They want to apply just in case. But there is labor involved. You have to, even if you have a really strong template, you want to, for your CV and your cover letter and all your materials, you still need to tailor those materials to each institution, right? So you don't want to send a cover letter that you wrote for a primarily research focused position to a teaching intensive college, right? Because the priorities are completely different. And they, it's not going to feel to that hiring committee that you have actually researched what this position in this institution is and that you actually care about that, that job. So you have to have some skin in the game, which is what makes this both logistically and emotionally hard. Like you have to kind of live each of these experiences, even though you know that you might not hear back from them, in order to feel like it really is, you really are authentically invested in this opportunity. So I would caution against just sending things out blindly and applying to things because they could work out. You really want to reflect on each job ad and make sure it's a right fit and worth the labor that you're going to put into tailoring those materials. So maybe a way that you keep this part of your routine, or you set aside time to do this, is you set aside a number of applications a day or a number of applications each week that you're going to send out. Or you dedicate a number of hours each day or a number of hours each week that you're going to spend looking through things and crafting materials. Maybe you even put it on your calendar and every Friday, you spend 3 hours working on your job materials, and that's just like a regular commitment that you keep to yourself. Or maybe you wake up early and while you're drinking your coffee, you spend an hour rewriting a cover letter or sending out an application package, and that just becomes a regular part of your daily practice. But just find a way to keep it sustainable so it doesn't, you don't the alternative to that is that you just save all these job ads and you let them pile up, and then they feel like they're hanging over you and you're worried about missing deadlines, and then it becomes more stressful than it needs to be. The more you build it into your day, the easier it will seem. And also, I am a big fan of spreadsheets. So I highly recommend having a really detailed spreadsheet, like a Google Sheet, where you have a link to every job ad that you send out. Also, importantly, don't just link to the job ad, but save it as a PDF and keep that in a folder somewhere because sometimes they take these job ads down. And then if you're called back for an interview and you can't get back to the initial job ad, and you want to refer to it to prepare for your interview, it's really helpful to have that PDF copy, or or printed copy, whatever, so that you can refer to it. But like keep, like what's the job ad? What did I send them? When is it due? So you can look at like what's coming due for you and you can filter that way. What are the basic requirements of this position? Again, if you need to refer to that later, or any other notes that you had as you were looking at the job ad. And you want to do this for two reasons. One, as I said, if you're called back for an interview later, you want to be able to look back easily at what the job is and what you sent them so that you can speak to those materials in your interview. Also, it might happen that sometimes there are two positions open within an institution because sometimes they do like group hires or hire in pairs. Um, or maybe you sent an application out to this institution in one cycle and like something came up later in the cycle that opened up. You don't want to make the mistake of getting those positions mixed if you apply to both of them. So having really careful note taking and really detailed tracking is going to help keep you, be able to manage all of this information and not get wires crossed and be able to stay, on track with everything. So you're going to have your spreadsheet. That's going to be like your big dashboard of everything that you're applying to and, when it needs to be done. And then you're also going to have a set of Google folders or OneDrive folders, whatever you use, with a folder for each position that you apply to. And in that folder is going to be all of the materials that you sent to that institution. So the CV that you sent, the cover letter that you sent, everything else that you sent them, it's going to be in that folder so that again, you can refer back to it later if you hopefully need to. And then you can also have in this like big file of job materials, you probably want to have some templates for your different documents and you might want to have a couple of versions of templates. So you might want to have a set that's for, a research focused institution, a set that's for a teaching focused institution. But you want to like keep all this stuff really organized so that you can access everything easily, because it's going to be a lot. Like there are a lot of job ads and lots of details. Everyone asks for a different thing for some reason. And so in order to organize all of this information and not be overwhelmed by it, good organization is going to be your friend. And as I already said, like ensure as you're sending these out that there's this really cohesive narrative in all of your materials. Like, does it tell the story that you want about others to know about you? And that includes your letters. So your letter writers, like once you have this narrative that you've practiced in the mirror with yourself and the story that you're ready to tell about, me as a scholar and my next steps in my research career, are the people who are writing letters for you going to be able to tell that story as well? If not, you might need to cultivate that a little bit. You might have to have conversations with them about how you want to present yourself and how they can support you in doing that. And if you feel that they really will not be able to get there with a little bit of coaching, you might want to think about other recommenders too. So once you have gone through this intensive process of sending things out and crafting your materials and keeping your spreadsheet up to date and all of that, now you also want to make sure that you're continuing the sustainable practice for the next steps. So again, it's a marathon, right? As soon as we finish one cycle, we probably want to start getting ready for the next academic cycle or preparing for interviews or like whatever is coming next for us. So going back to that timeline, like the next step after you send the materials out is you might be invited back, or you hopefully will be invited back for first round interviews, which usually take place over Zoom. To prepare for those, like I said, AI can be a really helpful tool here. So you can give ChatGPT the job ad and your CV and say like, give me interview questions for a first round faculty interview. And it will generate a list of questions for you, most of which will be about your background, your current and future research plans, teaching and course development. And again, those will be prioritized differently based on the type of institution. And then like give those to a friend and have them interview you, right? Like really do a mock interview. The more you practice this, the more confident you're going to be going into that stage if you're invited. You also want to do if you are invited for a first round interview, do a ton of research about the institution, about the faculty who will in your department who you might be speaking with. Just so you can show them that you've done your homework. You don't want to be like you don't want to go too far in that direction, but you want to know kind of like who you're speaking with and kind of like what maybe the needs of the department are, how that department fits into the rest of the institution. What the kind of over like the strategic vision of the institution is overall, so you can connect to that. I was once in a hiring committee where we asked the candidate about like how his work fit with the mission of the institution, and we could see him Googling the mission of the institution as we were talking, and like you don't want to be that person. So like do your homework first and come prepared. And the next stage after the first round interviews is you might be invited back for an on-campus interview. That would be the second round. That's usually a full day where you meet with faculty, you meet with deans and kind of other campus partners, people who are invested in your success as a faculty member. And that's the time when you ask questions about, like the schedule for hiring or your teaching schedule, what the expectations will be for, promotion and tenure, things like that. What kind of institutional support you can receive, like for setting up your lab, if that's something you need to do, or immigration support. And again, same here, you want to do your homework on the institution, on the people that you'll be meeting.
In like 2 hours.
And for this round, you'll probably also be asked to do a job talk, which is like a talk about your research, a lecture, or what's called a chalk talk, which is like a teaching demonstration. And so you want to prepare to do something like that. And that's where you tap into your mentors and your community, that support that you've built, because they're the people who help you practice and prepare for that step. And then if you are lucky enough to get a job offer, that's great. That's where you start the negotiation process and being able to articulate your needs, which could be lab space, like startup funds, protected time for research, green card sponsorship, those kinds of things. Again, you want to come back to your mentors at that point, think about like what have other the Future PI Slack is another great resource for that. Like what have other people negotiated? What are the kind of reasonable things that you can ask for? How to kind of be strategic about that. You can also, it's important to research faculty salaries, and I added a link here for a tool that has a map of faculty salaries around the country, because it really differs by institution, by geographic region. So you want to have a sense of like what the ballpark is for a faculty salary in your discipline, in that institution, in that area of the country, so that you know what you know if you're being lowballed, or you know what to ask for from there. And like there are other things that you can negotiate too. Like some institutions offer moving expenses, some can negotiate a spousal hire if you're doing a dual search. So just think about the total, like there's a tendency to focus on the salary, but think about the total compensation package and the kinds of things that are important to you as you start that position, because that's the stage where you'll start to work that out. If you are in the position where you feel like you need to decline an offer for any reason, you have competing offers, or you realize that having spoken with having gotten to know this institution and the faculty, like it's just not the right fit for you, like that's important information that you should listen to. Like don't just take a job because it's a job, like really make sure that this is the right fit for you to move forward. It might happen, so you can just decline the position very politely. If you have plans to go elsewhere, you can let them know where you're going, and be grateful by this point they've invested time and resources and pursuing you as a candidate. So you want to show that you understand that, and don't burn any bridges. The academic world is a small one, and so you want to maintain these connections, but also you don't want to get yourself into something that is not going to be right for you. And if you go out on the market and you don't get invited for a first round, or you don't hear back from any institutions, like that is okay. It doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. It is a tough market. It often takes, like I said, on average 3, but sometimes even more cycles to to find a fit. And it really, it's not about your worthiness as an academic or your worthiness as a person. It's really about the fit. It's like, was your were your qualifications and your research agenda and your kind of um, ethos as a scholar, like, was it a right fit with the positions that were available in that cycle? Sometimes no, right? And academic hiring is slow because of the tenure system. Institutions don't turn over that quickly for faculty positions. So sometimes you have to wait for the right fit to come around. And just because you don't hear back doesn't mean that it won't happen for you. So be kind to yourself. And again, that's why it's so important to have that plan B, because you need something that will keep you going financially, emotionally, in all the ways as you're pursuing this. And also that will make you feel like you have more within your locus of control, because like I said, that so much of this is luck and timing and fit, and that can feel like so much is out of your control. So the more you can bring things into your locus, your area of control, the more confident and the more prepared you will feel. So as I said, we have, if you're interested in learning more about how to prepare some of these materials that we've been talking about, we have some workshops coming up where we'll deep dive into first, that self-care during the job search process, which is so important, which is really going to make it sustainable for you. And then the CV and cover letters, the teaching statements, research statements. And then in July, we have a session where you can, we'll have a bunch of folks who can help you review some of these materials so that you're ready to go by August when job ads start coming out. I also want to share, I will share these slides. I threw a bunch of resources up here that I think are really helpful to anybody considering this process. Stuff about negotiations, stuff about like thinking about the academic job market and how you might fit into it, and how you can interview, like lots of different things here for you to check out. And I also want to also mention that the CIE and the graduate school have YouTube channels where we have past events in this series, but also other workshops like the one on academic online presence that I mentioned. The CIE recently did a great session on, like presenting yourself as a scholar online, and how you can maximize like your social media and all of those things to kind of promote yourself on the web. So those are all important to think about as you're doing a job search too. And so I'll close there. And I don't know if there are any questions but I'm happy to take questions now or explore any other topics that people are thinking about.
You can either raise your hand for a question or add it right to the chat. I think, Molly, you did such a fantastic job covering all of the areas that nobody has any questions for you today.
Okay, well, I mean, if anybody does have questions later on, like you think of them later, like feel free to email me. I'm happy to connect. And if you're dealing with a negotiation, or you've got a job ad that you want somebody to look at your materials and like help you really focus on that, I'm happy to do more one-on-one support as well.
And we will send a follow-up email as well, which Molly mentioned her slides will be included in there, and we'll add all of the resources that were mentioned and shared as well. So if any questions do come up, you'll have all of our emails to respond to, and you can send us a message. Otherwise, have a fabulous day, everybody, and thank you for joining us. And Molly, once again, thank you for facilitating this fabulous workshop. And hopefully we'll see all of you in June.
For sure.
Thanks, Molly.
Thanks, guys. Bye, everybody.